paradox of the rock. Can God make a rock so heavy he can't lift? Blah 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 blah.
Sure, yeah, it's a silly question.
Right, but then like the way that you're putting this, it's almost possible that maybe if you believe in like different degrees of logic based upon what dimension you're in, then I can say it could be possible that within Allah's dimension he can do that.
No, because you have like assumptions and certain presuppositions. Like for example, if we go with the rock but can't lift, you're assuming that there's physical strength involved. You're assuming that the rock is made of some type of material form that you're familiar with. You're assuming that up is up, and it can just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. There's all these, like, you're assuming that the rock has a molecular composition, like an atomic mass. You're assuming all these things. So it's
within Allah's realm.
I don't know. I don't speak of it.
Well, for example, we have the scriptures of it. There's water, there's a throne.
Yeah,
so
again,
whatever,
it's not like our water.
Sure. So whatever reality the water or the throne has, I'm going to imagine the rock has the same reality.
Yeah, but you don't know what reality the water has.
That's fine.
So that's why we
whatever
can't imagine the rock.
It is, well, no, we can't imagine a rock, right? But a rock with, I'm going to say a rock with similar properties to what the arch of the throne has.
I can't speak to that because now what you're saying is, tell me about the composition of the throne, and I just don't know.
No, I'm not asking for it. I'm just saying that I am not opinion to things that are necessarily physical. But there are things in heaven or within the Islamic concept that at least sound in some sense to be physical. But even if they're metaphysical thrones, can there be a metaphysical rock that Allah can't lift if he has a different operation of logic than we do?
I don't use that type of language, bro, because like...
Just hypothetically.
There's no point in going that way. Because I'm saying, like, it's not going to change. It's not going to change what's required of me by God on what I'm capable of doing. Like, for example, it would be silly for him to set that type of a requirement to obtain that type of knowledge when he himself in the Quran says that when it comes to that realm, the realm of souls, only he knows. So the requirement is, alhamdulillah, removed. Yeah, but the scripture also gives certain parameters, right? So like, for example, what you're talking about is things that are in the hadith and things that are within the Quran. But then both of those contain parameters, brother. So when they contain those parameters, he tells us at certain points, stop. Otherwise, you're just going to be going off of conjecture. And I'm saying that there's no benefit to either you or me to talk about the conjecting elements. Like, it's cool because we have that,
parameter is ever put on the throne.
It is. It 100% is.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it is. Nowhere does he say, hey, you need to know what the throne is.
But he also doesn't say, don't question the throne either. I mean,
yeah, because,
he says...
But he tells us not to question the realm of souls. And if that belongs in that realm, then... He said you gave us but a little bit of knowledge.
Well, so in the divine cosmology of Islam, the throne is above the heavens.
Yeah, but okay,
so it's not actually contained within the realm of souls.
How do you know that?
Because
you don't know that.
The idea is that Allah sits above His throne, which is above the water, which is above the created order.
Yeah, you're gonna have to prove that.
You're
gonna have to prove that it's not within the realm of souls. You're gonna have to prove all.
Well,
and I'm saying,
if it was within the realm of souls, remember earlier when you agreed with me that God isn't time bound. The realm of souls is within the created order.
So again, you're conflating this material, terrestrial, created. Yeah, again, I understand what you're trying to say. You're trying to say that it is created, and yes, absolutely. The only thing uncreated is the Creator Himself. Okay?
And the Quran.
Well, again, you're gonna don't do this, bro, because this is not. We can go down that route, bro, but you're just going to end up like all these other conversations where they're regurgitated. And like I said, I care about your journey, and I care about you as a human being, and I care about being upon truth.
Backtrack to the incarnation? Or?
No, I think we're having a beneficial conversation, but I'm saying, like, ask questions as to, that things that you can actually, like, for example, things that would get you closer to the Creator on what He actually revealed. Like, I think that's where
I'm always happy to talk about Jesus.
Alhamdulillah, bro. I love Him as my prophet, as my messenger. I love Him as the Messiah to the Jews. I love Him as, I love Him as a truth speaker. I love Him as as an example for the people of their time. I love Jesus, bro, and I'm glad you do too. So I'm glad we have this thing in common.
What do you love about him?
I love what he taught. I love that he taught that there's only one creator. I love that he attributed that. John 17:3. That's probably, when I was reading the Bible, that was the most impactful verse to me.
Have you ever read John 17:1-10?
Yeah, I have.
What did you think about that?
What I did notice when I read the book of John, bro, is I noticed that there was ample times that Jesus was called a prophet. So it is fine. So now,
well, I can call you like a man. Is that all you are?
Yeah,
you might be a husband, a father, right?
Contextually speaking, what was going on during these verses, and I'm not going to explore like every single verse right now.
You probably should actually.
Well, there's no need for me to.
Do you want to look at John 17 again? I think it's important.
What would you like to look at?
Well, in verse 5, he talks about having pre-existent glory with the Father.
Great. All the prophets had pre-existing glory.
How does that work when they don't pre-exist?
They do pre-exist. So for example, you know when it says that he created God in his image? Okay, the way that I understand that...
Created God in his image?
Excuse me, created man. Thank you for that. He created man in his image. I view that as he created man in his imagery, meaning that God, and again, I'm not imposing this is just my human understanding, is that he has a mind. He has the ability to think, like volition. He has the ability to conjure whatever he wills, right? And part of that is the imagery of man. 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 ears, a nose, 2 eyes, some hair, sometimes lacking. You know, mashallah, you got good hair. So I'm a little jealous. But my point being is that they were all, and even you, were in pre-existence, in his imagery, in his knowledge. So you were sent at a particular time, which is today, right? Today you would be X years old and you would be living X life. But in his knowledge, you always existed. So
I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay, so if that's the case, then you would have to prove how God is not all knowledgeable, because you had to have been in his knowledge bank, just for the simple terms, and then you were manifested in time.
So God doesn't have a knowledge bank. Right?
So what does he got?
So this is another problem within the Islamic understanding of God's knowledge, right? Because the problem is within Islam, you guys give Allah the opportunity to learn new things. You do actually. There's a very popular argument about Surah 3, verse 140, when it says that Allah may know. Or it's rendered in a few other ways, but one of the ways is Allah may know. The term is, I think, like a wali yama or something, is the idea. And there have been arguments about how Allah's knowledge works as a result of that verse.
I don't hold that position. I hold the position that he's all knowledgeable at all times.
Meaning what, exactly?
There is no thing that he doesn't know of, that he's not aware of, or possibility that he doesn't know of, or he's not aware of at any time.
Anything.
How could you be all knowledgeable and learn? That would just be silly, man.
Okay, well,
I think at least for me, you know, I'm like,
fair enough.
That sounds nuts.
Fair. I can show you some Quranic verses if you want to see where Allah sort of talks in this slightly ambiguous way. Like when he talks to Moses, he tells him, "Go to Pharaoh. Perhaps he might listen." You know, perhaps to us sounds like maybe.
But brother, that's rhetoric. It's a form of rhetoric. When he say, so like for example, imagine if let's say when you read that, when you say that, I think of you'll see. I already know, but you'll see.
But so
perhaps
the issue with that is that is a almost Americanized English expression.
That's funny.
Does it exist in like ancient Arabic?
Yeah, think about that. That's a question for you, not for me, because I don't have an issue with it.
Well, so for example, like in the Bible, right, or even in the Quran, we have that term of the rich man, or it's more difficult for a rich man to head to heaven than for a camel to touch the eye of a needle. We don't use that term anymore. We use things like, when hell freezes over, or when pigs fly, right? So how do you know that perhaps in the Arabic is rendered in the same way as you'll see?
Yeah, because you have to look at it comprehensively, right? So like if you hold the position that he's all knowledgeable, then by default it will give you that context cue. So if you understand and accept that he cannot learn anything more, there would be no other alternative by default. That's how I would view it. Just simply taking up that position of like, because if you can add to a cup, then it's in need of something. It's not fully pure. It's not fully. You know what I'm saying? And
what I would then do is, like, for lack of time, I would encourage you to have a look at the debates around Surah Al-Imran, verse 140, and you'll see you should see it around. But people do debate this around what God's knowledge is. So for us, we hold that God is pure acts, right? So God doesn't have any potential, right? He doesn't have any past or any future. And when he looks at his creation, he looks at it all in one glance. So effectively, past, present, and future are in his purview all at once. And his knowledge isn't one where it can increase or decrease.
That sounds
because
great.
in all possible worlds, we hold that God knows things that are created by understanding the form of the thing without actually becoming the thing.
That sounds
right?
great. That's great, man.
I don't believe so. When you just talk now about pre-existing in the knowledge bank of God, we don't hold that because that ascribes that there was some passage of time before we were actualized, that God had us in his thinking before he made us, and we don't hold that.
Yeah.
So that's why when I said with Jesus, right, that he has pre-existent glory with the Father. Pre-existence implies without creation.
So a couple things come to mind.
So that's why.
Really, God bless you for that.
17:5.
So check this out. A couple things. One, if you hold to the view that he doesn't need to take form of a creation to either have understand it, right? Then if that's the case, then he would never have to take human form.
So he doesn't take human form to understand us. He takes human form to redeem us.
Right. So let me put a clarifying nuance on there. He would not have to take human form to understand sin and how to rectify it.
No, he doesn't take human form to understand sin either. He takes human form for the express purpose of saving us from sin. So there is no necessary learning of the mission when he's here on earth. He already comes with the understanding of the mission. So he's not learning anything to help him on the mission.
So curious then, why didn't he do that earlier to the previous generations if your position is that the way that he understands sin is to actually
redeem our human nature.
But through incarnation and sacrifice.
Sure. So for the sacrifice portion, like I was looking up earlier actually, when you talked about reading, for example, the Torah, and not seeing the consistency with sacrifice in the New Testament. The Torah is all about sacrifice. The Levitical laws talk endlessly about different weekly, daily, monthly,
but not human
annual sacrifices. Right. So we're not saying Jesus. That's why we talk about Jesus in this motif of him being a lamb. Or the sacrificial lamb, the Passover lamb, right? Now, spiritually, we taught in Christianity that the things that happen physically in the Old Testament have like a spiritual rectifying in the New. That's the explanation behind Jesus saying, I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So fulfillment means completion. The law is pointing towards a savior and salvation, first with the Jews, and then, as Abraham was promised, his descendants, the Jews, would be a light to all the nations. And all would come to worship the true God because of the promise that God had made to Abraham. So it's Abraham, the Jewish people, and the rest of the world. That's how it works, right? So if
but why did he change? So why did he change the way that he actually delivers the redemption? So before it used to be animal sacrifice, then it changed to human. Now let me add this caveat as well. If you read the book of Ezekiel, the third temple is going to be built, and then Jesus is going to be actually offering sacrifice for himself.
I don't.
So why did it go? I'm not going to mess with you on that.
If you want to bring that up,
no. Feel free. Check out. I think it's Ezekiel 44.
Does this say the Lord will sacrifice to the Lord?
Yes, it does. That's the issue. And so, but here's what I would rather.
All right.
I'm not going to stick on that.
I kind of want to finish that.
Please.
The whole conversation.
But it went from animal to human, back to animal. Why? If he already understood sin, why would he now all of a sudden need to change how he's getting rid of it?
If you have a citation for the verse, I can read it for you.
Yeah, Ezekiel, chapter 44 onwards. I want to say it's like from 44 to...
We can have a
I'll
look
get
at
it for you.
I can
Yeah,
bring it up for you in a second.
No problem.
But the understanding is that there is in the New Testament, you're seeing these things fulfilled spiritually. So what you're having there isn't necessarily just a mere human sacrifice. What you're having is the lamb mentioned in the Old Testament being fulfilled in the person of Christ, who is a person of God. And so because the lamb only offers what you would call like temporal bereavements of sin. There's weekly, monthly, annual sacrifices that have to be done on a recurring basis. The Lamb of God, Jesus, is a final, an ultimate sacrifice, right? The sacrificing of the Son, similar to the motif of the binding of Isaac, for example, in the Old Testament. So that's why you're seeing that. And the thing that's being done there is the need to repair a broken human nature.
Okay.
It was perfect for what it was supposed to do in the beginning. So God is perfect in a way that God is perfect. And human beings were made perfect in a manner that would allow their nature to fulfill the telos, or the purpose of what God made them to do. We lost that perfection, that human perfection. And since we've lost it, that's why the world suffers, and that's why we make each other suffer. So what is promised to us is that this will be rectified at some stage.
Well, why
and you
would
can read about
they,
this in Romans.
If he was the last lamb, then why would they rebuild the temple and then continue the sacrifices for the purpose of sin?
Remember how Jesus in the New Testament says to the disciples that knock this temple down and I will rebuild it in 3 days, or I will raise it again in 3 days. So we actually hold that the physical temple being talked about in the Old Testament is actually spiritually fulfilled in Christ. So Christ is the temple people will come to worship at.
But he himself is going to be making sacrifices for himself as well.
Right. So you're reading it in a literal sense.
Oh, that's what it says.
Well, there are many things that are said literally in the Old Testament that have a spiritual fulfillment. So we have like multiple ways in which we understand Old Testament prophecy. Some are literal, yes, but some can be moral. They can be analogical.
But this is New Testament.
Yeah. So okay, for example, let me give you an example. Right. So Moses in the wilderness at one point lifts up a serpent, a bronze serpent, right, to heal the Israelites because they have been cursed with serpents by God for turning their backs on God while they were in the desert, right? Now, this sounds like, okay, fine, so it's some weird, like pagan symbology stuff, right? Actually, funny enough, that's the reason why you have the snake on the back of ambulances. It's from that story. Now, Jesus in the New Testament tells us that until the Son of Man is lifted up, like Moses picked up the serpents in the wilderness, then those who look upon him will be healed and achieve eternal life in the same way that people looked upon the serpent in the wilderness and were healed. So you have these two like random events, or one random event, and it being somehow spiritually fulfilled in the new. So Jesus, for example, is not a bronze serpent on a stick.
So was there a fulfillment
the motif is put on him on the crucifixion.
Right, and I'm fine with that. I understand that from your worldview.
Yep.
Now, continuing on with that, if it was fulfilled, why rebuild the temple and why continue the sacrifices for the purposes of removal of sin? Because it was already fulfilled.
So what I would say now is, again, I haven't read the verse.
It's okay, no problem.
For what
it's a great one where we can continue
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
For what it sounds like to me, I can argue that this is fulfilled in number one, the death of Jesus, the resurrection, aka the building of the third temple, and the sacrifice that he's committing in whatever you describe in Ezekiel is the sacrifice he made on the cross.
Okay, so it specifically says that he's going to sacrifice a bull. So it's going to be, and that was my original question, is why is it going from animal to personhood? I'll respect that from your worldview, personhood, all the way back to animal. And that's the contention that I
I
have.
think the issue is you're literalizing that because, for example,
That's what it says.
so Christians, for example, don't hold that a third temple structure is required. For example, we
So
see
then
that
you're going against the Bible.
Well, we're not going against it. We have proper understanding of what that terminology means. So in Luke 24:27, Jesus is shown to unroll the Torah or Tanakh for his disciples. And he gives them, in the Greek, he gives them the proper interpretation of what these things mean. So whereas you're reading it and looking for a literal one-to-one with what is in Ezekiel, often there are many things in Ezekiel that are hyperbolic.
Yeah,
For
but
example, when it talks
I'm
about
talking
the
about the
wheels.
crystal clear text. It
Right.
has no ambiguity to it whatsoever,
Well,
and then it
show
says
me-
that he will sacrifice for himself as
Right.
well.
So
And
tell
that
me-
means he's not sinless.
Tell me why that has to be fulfilled physically. When I've given you examples of things that are physical
How would a
and are
bull?
spiritual.
How would a bull not be physical?
So a bull represents, for example, a sacrifice for the atonement of sin in accordance with Levitical law.
Yeah, but they physically sacrificed them.
And then spiritually,
Yeah, spiritually they were
morally,
hoping to reap the
it
reward.
is then showcased in the New Testament
Yeah, but-
as a different action.
Yeah, so my point being is the physical act was still conducted. And then the spiritual reward was sought after, right? I mean, that's the whole point, right?
In the old, but
Yeah.
in the new,
Yeah, right. So
the
this is the new-
action isn't required
Right,
anymore.
right.
Because
So
for example, think about it. The Gentiles, right, are not forced to sacrifice animals to God if they don't want to.
Yeah, but understand, he's gonna, when they rebuild that temple, he is the high priest. So he is going to be the one that is going to be standing at the sepulcher, and he is going to be saying, this is the sacrifice, and he is going to be sacrificing a particular thing.
But Jesus himself is the temple.
No.
Yeah.
He's the...
I can show
no.
it to you.
Okay, and I think this is where we have a difference,
Okay.
which again, I'm happy to have that difference
What,
of opinion.
what did Jesus mean when
But
he said?
how is he physically going to be in the temple if he is the temple?
Exactly, right?
Okay, so there has to
that
be a high
tells you-
priest.
No, he is the high priest forever.
No.
Right?
What you're doing is
There's no physical structure.
I'm going to tell you why.
That's the
I'm going to tell you why you need to look into it, and this is with all due respect.
Okay.
Because in Ezekiel, it actually talks about a physical structure.
And tell me why that can be fulfilled in a spiritual way.
What do you mean by in a spiritual way?
So, aka in a
there needs to be a
non-physical
high.
way.
Okay, because when you read the text clear as day, a physical high priest will be there. Otherwise, there's no point in rebuilding the temple. How are you going to rebuild the temple if Jesus was the temple? How are you going to rebuild Jesus?
Oh, so that happens when he dies and resurrects,
I
which is
understand.
why he says, "Knock this temple down,
Okay.
and I will raise it again."
So who's the bull?
So the bull is a sacrifice.
And it's a physical sacrifice.
And Jesus himself was the sacrifice on the cross. So he fulfills all
You're
the
blending the
prophecies.
two, brother.
And that's how we are
I
taught to do
understand.
this
But
in
you're
tradition.
blending the two.
Well,
It
you
was
need
a
to give
tradition
me
at a
reason
point.
as
I
to
did.
why it has to be physical.
I did because.
So what you're doing is you're appealing to the text, and you're saying the text is implying a physical building. So why am I not
No, it's
seeing?
concrete. It's not even. It's not implying. It is like legitimately saying that it is going to be a temple. It is going to have pillars. Okay, so for example, let's table that for just a second. You believe in the second coming, right? So is Jesus still the temple?
Yes.
How are they going to rebuild him?
So that's what's already happened.
Okay, but there's a second coming.
Yeah.
So why would they be building that physical temple if the second coming is happening?
So
And then who's the bull?
Funny enough, actually. So
This is where it's convoluted.
Notice that it's not Christians attempting to build a second temple. You might have some.
It's fine.
You might have some radical American evangelists, but it's a Jewish.
Why are you beating on the Americans, man? Give them a break.
I'm not. I'm
We're
just-
in London.
I'm
just kidding.
I'm just saying. So you might have some Jews, for example, who want to, like what you're essentially doing, fulfill the prophecy physically, right? But then there's a problem with they're not really having.
They
a
don't
high
believe in the
priest-
New Testament.
No, exactly. Right.
So it's Ezekiel, New Testament.
No,
They don't care about what
Ezekiel's old, but you're asking me a question, why are they building a third temple? The reason is they are literalizing it in the way you are. That's it. Because they lack the context of the New Testament. That's why.
Okay. Cool.
And oh, by the way, if you read Ezekiel, I remember if you this one Ezekiel, right? Ezekiel is like a very it's a very like spiritual book because a lot of the things that he sees in his visions, right, are like literally out of this world. Like look up Ezekiel's wheels, for example, if you want to have a interesting read on that. In one of the verses, it talks about these wheels that come out of heaven that are on fire, and the wheels have eyes, and the wheels intersect with other
Yeah,
wheels.
that can all be very metaphoric. And that can all be very
So why is that metaphoric, but the temple isn't?
because you're asking for something that can actually be a physical structure, and then you're asking for.
Well, why can't wheels of fire come out of the sky? What stuff that happen?
Well, they can.
Yeah?
They can. There's nothing
And
stopping
also,
you from
I
having
believe in Ezekiel, he describes like the coming of like the new kingdom, and in the new kingdom, he describes these like gemstones that are on the floor, like paved in the entire floor. Do you expect that when the new kingdom comes, there will be like legitimate gemstones like on the floor? It could be a metaphor for, oh wow, it will be shiny and grand. Right?
It could be.
Yeah,
very well could be.
So we understand that in the Bible, not everything is meant to be read literally. Because, for example, like in the Old Testament, in the Psalms, God is called like a rock and a shield, right? And like a mighty man of war.
Yeah, I don't think he's a rock or a shield or a mighty man.
And then we understand that those
100%.
things.
100%. I got no issue with that.
Okay,
I've got no
so
issue with
we have basically means by which, or hermeneutical means of interpretation that we use for the purposes of the Bible, right? And yes, we can make up our own, but it's better, in my personal opinion, if some of these interpretations can be found somewhere in like church history. If you read any like statistics, or if you read like any like commentaries on like Daniel or Mark or whatever by any fathers or bishops or whatever, yes, there are some things that they might say that are not completely accurate, right? However, it's good to see if your understanding is like the old understanding.
I think when you step into your worldview, of course it'll be whatever your understanding is. I guess
Sometimes you get me wrong.
Yeah, and again, that's fine. It's just the disconnect that I'm having is how it's going from one to the other, back to the other. And then the root of the issue is...
You're literalizing it almost as if that you're like a Tanakh observing Jew without the Old Testament, the New Testament. Sorry. That's why I think you're confused.
Well, then wouldn't it be fair that if it was revealed to the Jews that we would understand it the way they understood it?
So,
like that, you know what I mean?
Are you talking about Ezekiel or New Testament?
If Ezekiel is interpreted by the Jews as literal, then why not?
Because we hold that the greatest teacher of the Torah isn't a particular rabbi that you can name from the Jewish tradition, but that it is Jesus, because he's the one who gives the scripture in the first place. He is that angel of the Lord who Moses talks to on Sinai, who gives him the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, that's kind of strange to me, man.
Right.
But I'm not a Jew, so you don't have to worry about that.
Oh yeah. No,
You know?
Jews have their own means of interpretation, sure, absolutely. But then there are certain inconsistencies that they fall into, certain things that they don't necessarily want to discuss or throw to the wind. Like, for example, that angel of the Lord I talked about. The angel of the Lord is a very interesting figure in the Old Testament because it basically does the actions of God and bears the name of God. And so the way that they interpret that is like, I find interesting but unsatisfactory. But hey, they won't care what I say.
Yeah, they won't care. They won't care what I say either.
Nope.
You know? Yeah. So I guess, I mean, it seems like you had mentioned, we have a lot of those commonalities. I think, we talked about it a little bit a while back, but we were talking about the knowledge bank of God, and I said it for lack of better words. But the idea is that you are also in that pre-existence, meaning you are in that realm of souls.
So I am created, right? Meaning that I didn't have an existence, and then now I do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Exactly. So me being created has no bearing on the knowledge of God. Because like I told you, in our conception, God sees our entire reality in a singular glance, right? Now, before I am created, or we hold, at the point of conception, that is when the soul of a human being is created. It doesn't flow from a dimension into...
That's from your world.
Yes.
Okay, great.
It doesn't flow from one dimension into another. It is created in that instance as well.
Got it.
So because, interestingly, the idea of us like existing in a different realm before we enter this one is actually like a Platonic idea.
Okay, well, how do you-
Plato believed in like in the pre-existence of the soul. So the soul comes from the world of ideas into the world of we call this world like the world of
Yeah,
like shadow.
I know. It's been a while since I've read his works too.
Yeah. And when we come in, we forget everything from the world of like perfection, and then we have to do philosophy to remember it again.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you explain Adam?
What about him?
He was obviously created before the earth.
No, he's the last to be created.
So Adam was never sent.
Sequentially, he was the last thing to be created.
So do you believe that Adam was not created in the heavens?
No.
You believe he was created on earth?
In the garden, yes.
Okay, where is the garden?
The garden is no longer accessible to human beings.
No, but where is it? Is it on the earth or is it outside of the earth?
So, this is actually very, very interesting. So, the garden isn't necessarily a physical location. The garden is actually, or if you look at it from the garden to the temple to Jesus, the garden is supposed to be an intersection where the divine and creation actually interact with each other.
So a different realm.
Not a different realm. Some place in this realm that we will go back to at the end of days. So the idea is that it's a space where God can interact with humanity in an almost direct fashion, which is why you hear verses in Genesis like God walks through the garden in the cool of the day, that kind of thing. Then the garden is closed off to humanity when Adam and Eve are kicked out. The Bible describes that God places swords there to guard against anyone entering, because in that garden there is the tree of knowledge of evil and then the tree of life and death. Now, that intersection again then gets copied, or the idea gets transferred to the idea of a temple. But now, not everyone can go in. Only the ritually clean Levites can go in.
Okay, so see, the way that we understand it in Islam is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, you have the other realm, the heavens, right? Adam and Eve were created there. Before them were the angels. Okay, and also before humankind you had jinn. Yeah, it's a little better. So the idea now is that two things. One, in his knowledge, all possibilities existed, and all true possibilities started to take place. Meaning, at one point in time, there was no angels, and then there were angels. At one point in time, there was no jinn, and there was jinn. At one point in time, and this is again just for simplistic terms, not saying in time, but at one point, okay? Then Adam and Eve, first Adam, and then Eve from Adam, right? And then we were brought down to earth. But from Adam and Eve, all of our souls were created. So that's why we have that we come from the loin of Adam, meaning that all of mankind, all of humankind was in that realm already in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge, for lack of better wording.
So we have a real existence before we're here on earth.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're going home. That's the whole point of wanting to get to Jannah, man. You want to go home, man. You don't want to stay here.
If we exist, because this is very, very platonic, if we exist in a reality in Allah's mind before we come here, do we do anything while we're there?
Don't know. There's a realm of souls, and we don't, like I said, we don't delve into what we did, what we didn't do. It's not important.
Is your soul then eternal?
What do you mean by eternal?
As in, it's like uncreated?
Your soul is created.
Okay.
That's not what I said. So, like I said, there was a point in time where there was absolute nothingness, only the Creator.
But then, in that time, we existed as souls, or not yet?
Not yet. We had angels first. Okay. Or there might have even been other creation that we're not aware of.
Okay, and just to check. At this point, we don't exist in the mind of Allah.
At this point, no, you always exist in His mind. You always exist in His knowledge. No.
So Allah's knowledge isn't created.
I don't understand how you're like.
Hear me out.
You're going too much into metaphysics, and you don't need to.
Well, hear me out. Allah's knowledge isn't created.
Yes,
if
I
we
understand.
exist there, are we
Yes.
not then not created too?
No, bro. Okay, let me try to simplify it for you. The abstract idea, okay, like a blueprint. Is it still a creation?
So, you remember how earlier I asked you, did we exist in a real way? You said yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We existed in a real way.
So then that
Because
includes
you're
the abstracts.
skipping a step.
Okay.
You have the knowledge bank, which is a form of existence, for
That
lack
has
of a better
always
word.
existed.
And again, you're delving too deep into the metaphysics, bro.
So,
And I'm trying to
do you
explain
remember
to
how
you.
we got here? Because I told you that Jesus had pre-existing glory, and then you said all prophets did.
Yeah, they all did because
Right.
they were all in the knowledge bank.
Right.
Prophets, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew who was going to be a prophet or
So
not.
the claim of having pre-existing glory, we take that to be a divine claim.
Yeah, that's your worldview. That's great. I don't
Because-
see that to be. I don't see glory to be as a form of divinity in my
Well,
worldview.
so Jesus is saying in Matthew 17:5 that he had glory with the Father
Yeah.
before the world was. So it appears that, you remember I asked you, what are we doing in this, like, abstract mind that we're in, right? And you said, we don't know. Well, somehow Jesus, going by your view, appears to have memories of this time.
No, man. You see what
So
you're
then
doing?
how would he claim
Yeah, but you can get it through
before the world was, for
Yeah.
example?
Again, I don't hold to the Bible claim to be true,
But
right?
you
but I
quote the
will.
Bible.
I will give you the courtesy of stepping into your worldview. Now, stepping into your worldview, it could be revealed to him. So it could have been revealed to him that he had glory in the past. Now, where you're conflating the issue is you're saying glory equals divinity. And I'm saying that that's not the case.
God says in the Old Testament that he shares his glory with no one. So that's why.
I understand.
Do you believe
now,
that?
Now what you're doing is you're saying if he doesn't share his okay, well if you believe that, then if that's the case, Jesus can't have divinity because he doesn't share his glory with anybody. And that's what I'm trying
But
to say.
he's sharing it with Jesus, so therefore he isn't a separate person from God.
No.
He's a person of God.
No. See, this is what you're trying to bring up. You're trying to bring upon the Trinitarian worldview.
Well, it's right there.
You're creating so many yarns that I have to untwine. So let's take it step by step, okay?
Okay, so God doesn't
First
share
off-
his glory with anybody.
Okay, great. Does God ever lose his glory?
No.
So how did Jesus lose his glory?
He doesn't lose his glory. So what happens
What did he
is
do, table it?
No, by virtue of him taking on the form of a servant, right? So
He emptied himself.
Yes.
So he lost it.
No, he didn't lose it ever, right?
What's empty?
So
Nothing.
So again, the terminology there, the glory of God isn't something that can be tabled or emptied, right? However,
Isn't or is?
Isn't, it's not.
So how did he empty
Right?
himself?
Because it's from God's direct nature. The emptying is a description of him coming as a human. So assuming the form of man and a lower station than the glory that he has when he is the second person of the Trinity, that process of him walking around as a man that can be perceived is the idea of him letting go of his glory.
Yeah, and I
But
can't
there's never
reconcile
a
that from
diminishing
my
of it.
worldview. I can see it how I can see why you see that
Are
because
you
you need.
familiar with the hadith about Allah's veil?
Okay, you'd have to give me the reference.
It's Sahih Muslim 179a. The idea is that
If you can read it for me, then I can. I don't think I've ever actually read that one,
Yep.
but I'm happy to take a look at it with you.
1 second, sorry.
Sure.
So, if I pull it off you fast.
I'm trying to explain.
But effectively, my idea here is that Jesus is similar to this idea of this veil.
Direct and institutional racism.
Which one am I reading?
That one. This is the hadith
Right, so take a place and I will educate you. I will
So it says,
educate
the Messenger of
you.
Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was standing amongst us,
Yep.
and he told us 5 things. He said, verily the exalted and mighty God does not sleep, and it does not benefit him to sleep. He lowers the scale and lifts it. The deeds in the night are taken up to him before the deeds of the day, and the deeds of the day before the deeds of the night. His veil is is the light. In the hadith narrated by Abu Bakr, instead of the word light, it is fire. If he withdraws it, the veil, the splendor of his countenance would consume his creation so far as his sight reaches. What's the issue?
So it's not an issue. It's not an issue. It's a comparison. The idea is that Allah has this countenance, like His face, His identity, His glory. And it's something so powerful that it needs to be shielded from creation, otherwise it will be destroyed.
Okay.
Right? So now, Jesus has the same thing, but by being, same person of the Trinity. However, by taking on the form of a man, when He looks Peter in the eyes, He doesn't destroy him. So that's our understanding of the glory being shed when it comes to a human being. It's not being taken away or destroyed or tabled. Simply comes in the form of a human, and you can interact with him.
Yeah. Again, I don't see how you're drawing the comparison.
Jesus is the veil.
Jesus is the veil.
Is the veil. The veil you just read here, Jesus is the veil.
That veil that you're reading is not even from this world.
Neither is Jesus.
But He was here, manifest.
Right.
And you're saying the only reason why the manifest was there is because He was functioning as the veil?
No, the reason why we were able to see Him and that idea of Him shedding His glory is because He's functioning as the veil.
Okay.
Actually, Paul even calls Him the veil.
That's why I'm not seeing how you're drawing that comparison, because one,
the veil shields us from Allah's countenance, and without the veil, Allah's countenance will destroy creation. Jesus is talked about as being the image of the invisible God. So He is that very veil. And when He says, "He who's seen me has seen the Father," He is acting as that very veil, as that very thing by which you can get a glimpse of God without being destroyed.
yeah, but brother, I'm still finding it's strange that you're taking a hadith that's talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that a veil being there for Him, and now you're do you accept the hadith to be true?
So,
are you Muslim? I don't understand.
This is very funny because it is my understanding that there are many things that Islam takes from Christianity that it can't quite explain, but only reference. I can give you a whole list if you want, but this is one of the things. The idea of God, of the veil and
So
God.
why stop halfway, bro? Why not read the Quran and accept the rest? I'm a bit perplexed.
Right.
Why are you choosing? Why are you picking and choosing?
Think
when
about
you now
it.
you're. Let me
Yep.
hear me out real quick.
No worries.
Because here's how I'm understanding
Go
it.
ahead.
You're saying, okay, there was a messenger, and I accept what his hadith is, but I'm just going to ignore the rest.
No, I didn't.
And that's why you do that, man.
No, that's not my view at all.
Oh, well
So-
then you can't use the hadith to draw a comparison, bro.
I can use the hadith because
Why?
my claim is that there are things in Islam that are borrowed from Christianity but are not fleshed out in Islam. That's my claim.
And you're going to use Christianity to flush them out?
Yes, because Christianity has the fleshing out.
Why?
Let me show you.
Islam doesn't need Christianity, bro. It's the other way around.
It does because if, for
not
example,
understanding how.
in the Quran, multiple times it was something along the lines of, has the story of Moses not reached you?
Okay.
Right? Talking to, you would assume, the pagan Arabs, right? And then it gives a small glimpse of Moses' story.
Okay.
Well, then where's the rest of it? It's in the
Well,
Bible.
there's... No, bro. Okay. So, a couple things, man.
Yeah.
First off, there's many a times when the story of Musa alayhi salam was mentioned throughout the Quran, and each of them can give a contribution to some additional detail. However, this is the beauty of the Quran, bro, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us exactly what we need. Nothing less, nothing more. And to say that...
The hadiths prove otherwise, if you ask me. The presence of hadiths prove otherwise.
Yeah.
It appears that you need more.
No, brother. See, now you're adding another ball of yarn.
Okay, fine.
Okay. That's
carry on,
okay.
carry
I'll
on, carry on.
entertain it.
No,
No problem.
okay, carry on.
I can see that you're kind of sincere, but you have these things that really need ironing out. So, okay.
Ignore what I said and
The
carry on.
hadith, in the Quran, it tells us to follow the Prophet ﷺ. It tells us to look at him for a way as guidance, and the hadith is a comprehension and a deeper understanding of elements of the Quran. Alhamdulillah. So you have the first teacher of the Quran, though, was the Prophet ﷺ. So of course we're going to listen to what he has to say. Not only did he receive the message, but then he showed us how to best approach the message in the best manner possible to get the best results possible. So the thing is, like, hadith is also revelation, bro, but I'm telling you that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said is complete. And part of his sayings is to go and look at the Prophet ﷺ, meaning what God told us includes, you have the Quranic speech, which is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the direct words. Then you have the inspiration, which is a hadith.
I'm aware of this.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. This is just for the benefit of anybody that's listening. So now,
Can I add one thing to that hadith thing? There are some hadith, so not all hadith are revelation, but there are some that are, and they're called hadith Qudsi.
so again, you go with the authentic, hadith, and I'm not going to debate hadith with you because I'm not a muhaddithin, and there's a direct science to this. So if you want to, you can definitely consult people with knowledge on that stuff.
I wouldn't be able to call it revelation.
Okay, well that's your take.
There's certain
You know,
hadith are revelation.
that's your take. And you're entitled to your opinion. And I'm fine with that if that's meaning I accept whatever you say to be your position. If that's your position, great.
Hadith Qudsi are different from my understanding.
Yeah, well, these are the
revelations.
Yes. So, and again, to say that the Quran is incomplete,
Yes.
or that it's missing something,
Yeah.
that is a very that's a dangerous thing.
I don't think so. Adam has a wife in the Quran. What's her name?
How what?
It doesn't say that in the Quran.
Okay. So what's the problem?
So if the Quran had everything we needed to know,
No.
why do we need to refer
I'm
back
gonna
to the Bible
explain to
to
you.
understand?
So yet another ball yarn. So let me explain. So why do you need to know the name of Adam's wife for your salvation?
So, are you saying that the Quran only contains what's needed for salvation? Because I don't think that everything in the Bible, for example, is required for salvation, right? For example, knowing
How
if
would you
Eve
know
is-
what to do, bro?
Huh?
How would you know what to do or what to believe in? How would you know?
So, I don't think that every story, because for example, the Bible contains history. I don't think knowing the history has any bearing on your salvation.
Yeah. But
In my personal opinion.
the core concepts, right?
But-
so like, for example, the Quran,
Yep.
the more that you read it, the more that you engage in it, alhamdulillah, it builds your iman, it builds your faith. So when you read for the purposes of understanding and for the purposes of trying to locate the truth, you're going to receive that guidance that's necessary. You're going to get that opening from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Let me
So
approach
point
it
being
in a
is,
way. Go ahead.
here's what you're saying,
Yep.
and I don't mean to cut you.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to tell you is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us everything comprehensively what we needed. Part of that comprehension is actually the hadith, which are authentic. So now, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us his book, the Quran, and he gave us his messenger. So you have to look at it holistically. You can't say, we're going to take one without the other. It's just silly to. Now, why are certain stories repeated? Or am I going to have to know the name? Or why is this detail missing?
I guess
Okay, no problem. You are labeling it as missing, but the intent, whereas it was for it to never be there. So, for example, the intent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was for Hawa to not be in there. You saying that it's missing, meaning that he had an intent for it to be there, and for some reason now we're going to question the preservation. And that's a whole other topic.
No, I'm not going to get into preservation.
No, I know. I don't
but
think you will.
I think reliance is
I don't think you will.
definitely a big conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
For sure.
if I am a pagan Arab
Yeah.
in the 7th century, and you say, you are the prophet, and then you're telling me things like, have you not heard the story of Moses? I'm going to say, who the hell's Moses? Right?
Yeah, okay.
So, in my opinion, when the Quran says things like that, it is banking on the idea that there is already a story of Moses that exists somewhere, and what the Quran is doing is just summarizing the story that already exists.
Okay.
Because, for example, you believe that Moses is like born in Egypt, that he kills a man, runs away to Midian, comes back, frees the Israelites, frees them in the promised land, right? But then all the details about like what happened and in what sequence these things happened in are all in the Bible.
But how do you know that those details are correct from the Bible?
So when the Quran is referencing them, it's referencing
Not
them as
referencing the
though
details.
they're correct.
They don't. No. See, this is another issue, and I love you for the sake of God, bro. And I can see that you're genuine in trying to understand these things, and may Allah guide all of us, bro. So nowhere in the Quran does it say look at the details of what was said previously. Rather, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's why I said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us exactly what we need to know and nothing more. The details that you have in your Bible, you hold them to be true because you believe in the Bible. The Quran does not hold them to be true.
How can you tell?
Because it's not included in the Quran.
So then what that tells me is that the author didn't know about that information.
No. What that tells you is the author, the safest, the most intellectually correct thing to say is the author did know about the information but chose not to include it.
I don't see why they would, because it would make the story in the Quran a lot more fulfilling.
No, because now here, this is what you're doing. You're applying your way and saying, I know better than God.
Is the full story better than the partial story?
Again, it's what you're looking at. You're a couple things, bro. One, you're under the assumption that you have the full story. Two, you're under the
We have a
assumption.
fuller story, for sure. And in the Bible, what you have. Because we know about Moses when he was born to when he died. You don't have that in the
You
Quran.
don't have the story. You have a story.
So there is no better alternative. So I'm going to argue, there is.
Yeah, but there absolutely is.
Is there a more full story of Moses out there than what's in the Bible?
There absolutely is a better alternative. The alternative is that whatever you have is not necessary. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to tell you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed exactly what He wanted to reveal. Nothing more, nothing less. So the
I can give you an
alternative
example.
is, the alternative is,
Yep.
you may,
Yep.
the alternative is that exactly what you need, the spoonful of medicine is complete. There's nothing that you can add to it or take it away to make it any more beneficial.
I disagree. For this reason. The Quran doesn't, for example, mention the Ark of the Covenant. I assume you're familiar with the idea. Are you at all, Shay? There's a structure that the Israelites have in the desert with Moses that contains the Ten Commandments, a bowl of manna, the food from heaven, it's in the Quran, the staff of Joshua, I think, and then, I think what's in there. And also, the presence of God itself is in that box, made of gold. They transfer it, it goes with them, it enters the kingdom, it stays in the temple. The Quran doesn't mention that at all. Why is that? Exactly.
Why does it need to?
Exactly. The Ark is the very thing that gives the temple the identity of having God's presence. It's even a Jewish idea called the Shekinah, the dwelling, right, of the presence of God. Now, that idea, physical in the Old Testament, in the form of a box, is actualized in the person of Jesus. By not mentioning that in the Quran, you miss the connection to Jesus, who calls himself the way, truth, and life.
And this is again from your worldview.
So that's, for example, like a series of things the
No
Quran is
problem.
missing
No problem. So
that affects the salvation, for example.
right. So it doesn't, because what you're doing is you are saying it is a requirement. You are saying it is a requirement for you to know the Ark of the Covenant. It is a requirement for you to believe in this temple. It is a requirement for you, and I'm trying to tell you it's not. Islam does not depend on Judaism. It does not depend on Christianity. It is a comprehensive religion that does not depend on anything but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what He chooses to reveal. So I'm trying to tell you, take a moment, step out of your worldview, and recognize that what you're looking to do is you're looking to lay down puzzle pieces. And I respect that, bro. You're a man of investigation. You like to see things in conclusion, okay? I respect you, man. I really do. So now, on that same journey, right, you have to accept what you have with the flaws that it has, and in the same way that you're building those bridges to avoid the pitfalls of the flaws that you have, based on It could be pure faith, or it could be just a love for whatever you have, okay? This is part of your examination, brother. Part of your examination is that when you acknowledge that there is indeed another messenger, and there was another revelation, and that revelation is telling you what all the other prophets did that were critical to salvation. So when they all submitted to one God, when they all prayed to one God, when they all asked help from that one God, it didn't require any temples, it didn't require any, and then all, the Ark of the Covenant, it didn't require any trinkets. It is incumbent on you to research that wholeheartedly with the same investigative zeal that you have for the last revelation. And you will recognize that the path is a lot easier, bro. It's a lot easier than you're making it out to be. Because oftentimes when I talk to my Christian brothers, man, they love to, and they take it from a position of good faith, at least the good ones do. They love to have a thread that's uncut. And I'm trying to tell you that the thread that you're working with has been cut hundreds of times, but you've band-aided one part to another to make your section work. And I'm telling you that the thread that we have is complete, uncut, doesn't have any flaws, and still encompasses elements of your thread which are true, and eliminates the ones which are cut and led to falsehood. So in order to obtain salvation, it's not from the old that what we need. It's from the new that we have that is preserved. And I encourage you to, again, with that same zeal, bro, that same passion, is to look at it. Because you'll find that it's really simple, man. I mean, I'm telling you, it's really, really simple. All polemics aside. Remember, both of us here we feel that we're standing upon truth. And, I always like to ask my Christian brothers, why do you want me to accept Christianity?
It's the only way for you to actually gain eternal life. There's no other way.
Okay, and I want you to accept Islam because I feel the same, and I feel that I'm upon truth. And
There's a few ways in Islam that you can attain eternal life. It doesn't have to be just being a Muslim.
And we want well for one another. I've got no skin in the game to try to one-up you or to win an argument. I don't care about that, dude. My account is with my Creator.
Okay.
The same thing, your account is with the Creator. But I'm telling you that I'm standing upon certainty, and I'm showing you my evidences and reasons for that certainty. And I've explored both sides, and I genuinely encourage you to explore this side.
I don't think you've explored the Christian side. That's my issue. Because, for example, if you say that Islam doesn't rely on Christianity or Judaism, why are 99% of the prophets you talk about in the Quran all Jewish?
They're not.
Besides Dul-Qarnayn and Al-Qidr, they're all Jewish.
No, they're not. See, this is the thing, is you have and again, God bless you, bro, but you have an understanding
Should
that
we
is...
list them? I can list them for you.
No, they're not. I'm telling you, there's no one that you can list. From Adam all the way to Muhammad, there's no one that was Jewish. No one.
Jesus.
He's not Jewish.
What is...
If you're talking about nationality, if you're talking about origin, okay, he was a Palestinian Jew. But if you're talking about what is... Again, what you're doing is you're conflicting. I'm trying to help you understand.
Do you see what I mean?
These were all Muslim.
Why are they all Jewish?
I'm trying to explain to you they're not, and I'm repeating myself. They're not, brother. None of them are Jewish, man. None of them are Jewish.
Jesus literally is Jewish.
By faith, he is not a Jew. By nationality, by origin, he's a Palestinian Jew.
Well, if by faith he wasn't a Jew, why does he only quote Jewish scripture?
It doesn't matter what he quotes, dude. And again, you're looking at it from your worldview.
If he was a Hindu and he was only quoting Jewish scripture, how does that help his case with Hinduism?
You can say thing with Hinduism, it's both a nationality and a place of origin. People say, oh, I'm Hindi, but they're not actually from Hind.
Zoroastrian?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So don't do that to yourself, bro. You have to look at what he actually did, what his actions did. His actions were submission to God. He was a Muslim.
In the name of Jesus.
He was a Muslim. It was only until the labeling came from other people.
Oral sex.
We can go eat.
Oral sex.
It's been a good conversation. I think it's a good
bow down and put your mouth on toilet.
Are you busy?
2 hours now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna catch up with the brothers. We'll see.
Why is everybody on date?
It's been a long time. Alhamdulillah. I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides us both, bro. And,
Fair enough then. Fair enough. I guess the last thing that I'll show you is, this is what I meant, by the way, about the whole veil idea. This is in 2 Corinthians.
From 12?
From 12, yeah. That's what I meant about the whole veil idea.
You are right. No man can talk to me who licks the toilet bowl. You're not on the level to talk to me. Oral sex.
Yeah, I'm gonna go as soon as I find out what
Jesus
Jesus
of Nazareth. Jesus of Nazareth, the toilet. So with
Okay. Where do you want me to stop?
Just yeah, as long as you've sort of seen, yeah. So the idea of this veil and how it is actually taken away in Christ. So that's what I was trying to show you. The conception of the veil isn't something that's only within Islam. It's in Islam. Well, no, we'll explain. And I think the actual explanation you will find here in the actual Bible.
You know, that very hadith that you gave me explained it. But it didn't explain it on Christ. It explained it on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
The issue would be like if the veil is a thing that can block Allah's countenance, how can a created thing block the magnitude of God if it's not like in some way divine itself?
Right,
and so we would say we can because Christ is God.
Yeah, and I understand that's from your worldview, so he needed to take on that veil in order to be
perceived
right.
by human beings.
And from us, he's just a man. So from our worldview, he doesn't, he doesn't need that. Now, your scriptures will support your worldview.
But you quoted from them. John 17:3.
Yeah, I understand.
But then before 3 precedes 2 and 1, and then following 3 precedes 4 and 5.
Yes, you can read it all in context, and it won't change the fact that he explicitly calls the Father the only true God. That's the issue. And I don't want to open up another can. I'm taking you away from your food, man.
No,
At this point, it's on, bro.
I am not hungry. I am not hungry.
It's okay.
You know what? Let me show you. Can I show you like?
Just email me on it.
Give me 4 minutes. Is that cool?
I can't. Trust me. 2 hours is a long time, and look, I'm here for 1 day.
Okay.
1 day, and then I have to head back.
Jesus says that all that belongs to the
I will
Father.
let you have the last word.
Sure.
Go ahead.
John 17:6. Jesus said that everything that belongs to the Father is His. Any thoughts?
No.
All
I
right.
don't have any thoughts. Cool.
That's one. Right then. All that the Father has is mine. Therefore, I said that I will take what is mine and declare it to you. So
That's fine.
that sounds kind of beyond a problem for me. If I said all Allah had is mine, that's like crazy.
Okay.
All right. Bless you.
All right. God bless you too, man.
And this,
I don't know what the heck to do with all this stuff. It's crazy.
That's a lot of cameras.
Yes, subhanAllah. SubhanAllah.
Very well, you can watch
I hope I don't have to click a bunch of buttons, but
no, I think the cameraman will do it for you. But you have to give that thing in your neck
how am I
back.
supposed to find everybody?
1, 2. I think give it to him. He'll yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, no worries. Well, had a conversation with Dawa Digest. It was cool. He didn't want to debate, so that's fine. We had a conversation. And just generally talked about a variety of things. Talked about the incarnation a little bit. Talked about what it means for Jesus Christ to be the veil. Talked about the relationship between what is in the Bible and what you have in certain bits of the Quran, and how the fulfillment or the fullness of those things can be seen in the Bible. Talked about Ezekiel and Christian hermeneutics, how we actually read the Bible and understand how certain prophecies are fulfilled. They aren't always literal. Sometimes it can be spiritual or moral or anagogical. I don't know what that even means, but ask Sig, he'll tell you. Anywho, overall, I think it's a good conversation, right? He had like some good temperance. However, the problem still remains that when you follow Islam, there's certain things that you just won't push further against. So you simply accept things as being true, presuppose that they are true, and then have no means by which you can verify those things other than Allah said so. And sometimes that isn't good enough because anyone can come and make that claim. Satanists can come and claim Satan said so, therefore it's true. But if you can actually back up why it's true, it doesn't really help you. Do you want that back?
Yeah.
Just ask. I'm not your enemy. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, that was pretty much it. But hey, we'll see how it goes. It was a nice conversation. So it wasn't a debate. It was just a conversation. All right. Well, anyway, pray for the boy. He does seem a bit like sincere. So we'll see if at some point in time he can revisit the text and then see what it said. But he did say that he was fine with John 16:15. He said he had no problem with the idea that everything that belonged to Allah belongs to Jesus Christ. So we'll see about that. Anyway, peace out, guys. And I'm back. It's been a while, but the Dawah Doctor's back in town. All right.